Now you may be asking yourself right now, why is Austin looking so fresh wearing that sweet, sweet Slurpee hat? And the real question you should be asking yourself is, why aren't you? Because today, we are going to be coding in style. So what I mean by that, of course, has nothing to do with what I'm actually wearing, but actually what the style of our code looks like. So over here on my screen, we can see a very simple script with a few functions and a few different variable declarations. And there's one thing that I really want to focus on today, and it's not the functionality of the script, but what the code actually looks like. So we can see a little bit of disparity between how the functions are written. Some of them use parentheses, some of them do not. Some have semicolons, some do not. This one has the curly brace way down below, which is bleh. And look at this. 4 spaces instead of 2. Now, interestingly, these are some of the things that developers love to quarrel over that actually have no impact on what the application actually does. And today, I want to show you how to kind of solve that once and for all in your applications. So the underlying concept is called linting, and since this is a JavaScript project, we are going to be looking at a tool called ESLint. And it does what it says, find and fix problems in your JavaScript code. Now, what do those problems look like? Well, I'm using VS Code, and I can install the ESLint plugin, which I have, and just enable it. And I can also go to my project root and drop an ESLint configuration file, which contains all of the settings and rules that I want to follow or adhere to in my project. So with ESLint installed and configured, if we go back to that file, we can see that the editor has kind of changed a bit. There's all of these red squigglies going on, and what the heck is that? Well, I can hover over them, and I can see that this wants me to replace V with parentheses V, and this wants me to add a semicolon here at the end. Now, that's pretty handy because once we make all of these changes, everything's going to follow the same coding practices, which is awesome. And we can even take it a step further. In my case, I've configured VS Code to use ESLint as a formatter and to format my code automatically when I hit save. So when I hit Control S, we can see that the code magically reshifted itself and inserted semicolons and changed double quotes to single quotes and all that goodness. So the only problems left here are these 2 little red squiggles at the bottom, and that's because I've assigned a variable, but I haven't used it, which isn't particularly impactful. And these, ESLint was not able to fix itself because that's a code change that could actually affect how the application runs, whereas inserting semicolons where they need it or adding spaces are generally not going to introduce any bugs. They're safe to make on its own. So these fixes that ESLint cannot make on its own, it's going to report to me and ask me to fix. So I can get rid of that one, or I can use a variable. And with that in place, and I hit save, you see how it inserted that little semicolon? Sweet. And so now my application is conforming to all of my rules. Great. Unfortunately, if your team gets large enough, you're probably going to have people that don't want to use VS Code or don't want to install that plugin, and that is perfectly fine. We can get around that by installing ESLint as a command line tool. With it installed, we can set up a npm script that calls ESLint on our source code. We can say, and then run it, npm run lint, and it will check our code to make sure it's working well. No errors. If I return those errors and hit save and run it again, it can report to us that there are errors. And the handy thing about having it as a CLI tool is we can integrate it to different parts of the development lifecycle. For example, right before someone commits code, we can say, hey, ESLint, use this Git hook that runs right before, as someone's writing their commit, but before they've actually committed it to the Git history, and go ahead and see if there's any errors. If there's any that you can fix it automatically and then commit the code. If there's any that you can't fix, prevent the code from being committed and report it to the user trying to commit that code. We can even take it a step further and have ESLint run anytime someone pushes some code to our production branch, let's say, so that when the code runs in production, we can have some sort of CI/CD pipeline that automatically checks out that code, runs ESLint against all of the code base, and makes sure that there are no errors that have been introduced. And if there are, we can prevent that code from being shipped automatically to production. ESLint can also report those errors to us, and the person making a PR can fix them. So why is it important to do this? Well, because it keeps everyone on the same page about what coding practice should look like. It actually makes it easier for people to follow those guidelines. And it can save your team a lot of time, so there's not a lot of unnecessary changes in PRs or a lot of requests to change code so that it follows certain guidelines, especially if ESLint can fix those for you automatically. So I hope you found this tip useful. If you want to see the coding guidelines that I follow, I can share a link in the comments. And otherwise, until next time, stay stylish.